In the days when the Philistines oppressed Israel, there was a man named Manoah from the clan of the Danites, and his wife, who was righteous and devoted to God, though barren, longed for a child. Then one day, while she was alone in the fields, a divine figure appeared to her. Radiant with heavenly light, the angel's presence overwhelmed her with awe. The angel spoke, saying,
"You have been barren and childless, but you are going to conceive and give birth to a son. He will be dedicated to God from the womb, a Nazirite all his life. Therefore, be careful to drink no wine or strong drink, and eat no unclean thing. His hair must never be cut, for he shall begin to deliver Israel from the hand of the Philistines."
Trembling with wonder and excitement, Manoah's wife returned home and relayed every detail to her husband, who listened in astonishment and reverence. Overwhelmed with gratitude, Manoah prayed fervently to the Lord,
"Please, let the man of God come again to teach us how to raise the boy who is to be born."
In response, the angel of the Lord appeared a second time, and Manoah, recognizing the presence of the holy messenger, sought guidance on the responsibilities of parenting their promised son. The angel repeated the instructions, confirming the Nazirite vow that would govern the boy's life. Manoah, wanting to honor the messenger, prepared an offering. As they laid it upon the altar, the angel ascended in the flame, disappearing from sight and leaving Manoah and his wife in awe of God's profound work. As prophesied, Manoah's wife bore a son and named him Samson. As he grew, it was clear that God's Spirit was with him, for he was not only blessed in strength, but also stirred by God's purpose. As a young man, Samson's strength became renowned, a wonder among his people and a source of hope in their struggle against the Philistine oppression. But alongside his divine calling was a human nature prone to impulsive desires and passions that often led him astray. One day, Samson traveled to Timnah, a Philistine town, and there he saw a woman of striking beauty. Enamored at first sight, he returned home, declaring to his parents,
"I have seen a Philistine woman in Timnah. Now get her for me as my wife."
His parents, deeply troubled by his choice, implored him to marry one of their own people, a woman who shared their faith and values. Yet Samson was unyielding, insisting,
"She is the right one for me."
Unbeknownst to them, this inclination was part of God's larger plan to stir conflict with the Philistines, using Samson's personal choices to bring about divine intervention. As Samson made his way to Timnah to arrange the marriage, a young lion suddenly leaped toward him from the vineyards. Surprised but not fearful, the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon him, filling him with supernatural strength. With his bare hands, he tore the lion apart as one might tear a young goat. Yet Samson told no one, keeping the event to himself. Days later, as he passed by the same spot, he saw that bees had settled in the lion's carcass, producing honey. Samson reached in, scooped some out, and tasted the honey, marveling at the sweetness that came from the decay of the fierce predator. He shared some with his parents, yet kept its source a secret, perhaps pondering the strange nature of God's ways and the strength he had been given. At his wedding feast in Timnah, surrounded by 30 Philistine men, Samson decided to amuse himself with a riddle, hoping to showcase his cleverness and win a prize. He proposed,
"Out of the eater, something to eat. Out of the strong, something sweet."
The riddle, born from his encounter with the lion and honey, confounded the Philistines, who struggled to make sense of it. Frustrated and suspicious of being humiliated at their own celebration, they grew desperate and sought help from Samson's new bride. They threatened her and her family, pressing her to discover the answer or face their wrath. Caught between her fear for her family and her loyalty to Samson, she tearfully begged him, day after day, pleading for the answer. Her pleas wore him down, and he finally relented, revealing the solution to her. Armed with this knowledge, the Philistines confronted Samson, smugly answering, "What is sweeter than honey, and what is stronger than a lion?" Realizing he had been betrayed by his bride, Samson's rage flared.
"If you had not plowed with my heifer, you would not have solved my riddle,"
he declared. Driven by anger, Samson went down to Ashkelon, another Philistine city, where he struck down 30 men, took their garments, and gave them to the wedding guests to settle the wager. Still furious, he returned to his father's house, leaving his wife behind in Timnah. Unknown to Samson, his wife was given to another man, one of his friends, adding betrayal upon betrayal.
When Samson eventually returned to reclaim his bride, he found out what had happened. Stricken with anger, he felt a deep, painful sense of betrayal and formulated a plan to exact his revenge on the Philistines. In his fury, Samson captured 300 foxes, tying their tails together in pairs with torches, setting them ablaze and releasing them into the Philistines' fields and vineyards. The foxes ran wildly, and the flames spread, consuming everything in their path. The Philistines' grain, vineyards, and olive groves were reduced to ash, their livelihoods destroyed in a single night. Furious, the Philistines sought to retaliate, blaming Samson's wife and her family for their misfortune. In a cruel act of vengeance, they burned her and her family to death. The tragedy of their deaths ignited in Samson a new wave of fury, but also a deep sorrow as he leaves the ruins of his wife's home behind.
"Because you have done this,"
he declared,
"I will have my revenge upon you, and then I will stop."
In one violent stroke, he struck down many Philistines, unleashing the force of his wrath upon them before retreating to a cave in Etam. Hoping to subdue him, the Philistines pursued Samson, eventually camping in Judah and demanding that the people of Judah hand him over. Terrified of further Philistine retaliation, the men of Judah complied, sending 3,000 of their own to find Samson. They pleaded with him, hoping to convince him to surrender. "Do you not realize that the Philistines are rulers over us?" they asked. Samson replied,
"I have only done to them what they did to me."
Understanding the gravity of his actions, he allowed them to bind him with new ropes, and they delivered him into the hands of the Philistines, believing it was the only way to avoid further bloodshed. As the Philistines seized him, triumphantly shouting, the Spirit of the Lord came upon Samson once more. With renewed strength, he snapped the ropes as though they were threads, and finding the fresh jawbone of a donkey, he wielded it as a weapon. In the ensuing battle, Samson struck down 1,000 Philistine men, leaving their bodies piled around him. He named the place Ramath-Lehi, or Jawbone Hill, in remembrance of the victory. Exhausted from the fight, he cried out to the Lord,
"You have given your servant this great victory. Must I now die of thirst and fall into the hands of the uncircumcised?"
In answer to his plea, God split a hollow place in the ground, and water poured forth, refreshing him. Renewed, Samson returned to his people, having secured a temporary peace for Israel. In the years that followed, Samson's strength became legendary, and his reputation spread, causing the Philistines to fear him greatly, yet his desires continued to lead him into peril. One night, he traveled to Gaza, where he met a woman and stayed with her. Hearing of his presence, the Philistines plotted to ambush him, confident that they could capture him at dawn. However, at midnight, Samson rose, sensing danger, and instead of fleeing, he seized the massive gates of the city, doors, posts, and all, and carried them on his shoulders to a hill near Hebron. The sight of Samson's power and defiance left the Philistines bewildered and fearful. Over time, Samson met Delilah, a woman of unmatched beauty. He loved her deeply, and she captivated him in a way no other woman had. The Philistine rulers, seeing their opportunity to capture him, approached her with an offer of silver if she would discover the secret of his strength. Driven by greed, Delilah began her pursuit of Samson's vulnerability. She coaxed and questioned him, pleading and pressing him to share the secret of his power. 3 times, Samson deceived her, each time offering a false answer. 3 times she bound him in the suggested manner, and 3 times he broke free, eluding the Philistines waiting nearby. But Delilah persisted. Her demands grew more insistent, her accusations more manipulative, and finally, after days of unrelenting pressure, Samson's resolve crumbled. Exhausted, he revealed the truth. "A razor has never touched my head, for I am a Nazirite, set apart to God from my mother's womb. If my head were shaved, my strength would leave me, and I would be as weak as any other man." Knowing he had spoken truthfully, Delilah called the Philistine rulers. As Samson slept, his head resting on her lap, they shaved his head, stripping him of his God-given strength. When he awoke to their ambush, he tried to rise and fight, only to find his strength gone. The Philistines captured him, gouged out his eyes, and took him to Gaza, where they bound him in chains and set him to grind grain in prison. In his captivity, blind and humbled, Samson's hair began to grow again, a sign that God had not completely forsaken him. The Philistine rulers decided to hold a great feast in their temple to celebrate Samson's capture, attributing their victory to Dagon, their god.
Blind and broken, Samson was brought before the crowd, where they mocked and ridiculed him. Leaning against the pillars of the temple, he prayed one last time, "Sovereign Lord, remember me. Please, God, strengthen me just once more, that I may avenge myself upon the Philistines for my 2 eyes." With a final surge of strength, Samson pushed against the pillars. "Let me die with the Philistines," he cried. With a final burst of strength, he pushed the pillars apart, and the temple collapsed, crushing everyone inside, killing him and the Philistine rulers. In his death, Samson achieved a greater victory than he had in life, and his story became a testament to God's power, mercy, and the tragic consequences of disobedience. Samson's family came to Gaza, retrieving his body and burying him in the tomb of his father Manoah. Though his life had been marred by flaws and moments of failure, God used him to bring deliverance to Israel, fulfilling the promise given before his birth. As we reflect on the story of Samson, several profound morals emerge, each resonating with timeless wisdom. First, we see the stark consequences of disobedience. Despite his extraordinary gifts and divine calling, Samson's repeated disregard for God's commandments ultimately led to his downfall. This serves as a powerful reminder that straying from our commitments can result in dire consequences, urging us to remain true to our moral and spiritual values. The tale also illustrates the danger of weakness in relationships. Samson's love for Delilah, while deep, blinded him to her true intentions. His vulnerability was exploited, leading to betrayal and loss. This teaches us the importance of being discerning in our relationships, surrounding ourselves with those who uplift our values and inspire our better selves. Furthermore, even in his darkest moments, Samson's story emphasizes the power of redemption. After being captured and blinded, he turned back to God, seeking strength one last time. This act of repentance shows that it's never too late to seek forgiveness and restoration. No matter how far we stray, a sincere return to our principles can renew our strength and purpose. The story also highlights that true strength goes beyond physical power. While Samson was immensely strong, his spiritual weakness ultimately led to his vulnerabilities. This duality reminds us that cultivating inner strength and moral resilience is just as important as any physical ability we possess. Additionally, despite Samson's flaws, God's purpose remained steadfast. God can work through imperfect individuals to fulfill his divine plan, reminding us that each of us has a unique purpose and that our mistakes do not disqualify us from being used for good. Lastly, Samson's tale serves as a caution against the consequences of pride. His overconfidence led him to believe he could defy God's commands without repercussions. This teaches us the value of humility, emphasizing that recognizing our limitations and seeking guidance can prevent us from falling into the traps of arrogance. In essence, the story of Samson is not just about strength and weakness. It is a rich tapestry of lessons about life, faith, and redemption. It invites us to reflect on our choices and relationships, inspiring us to strive for wisdom, commitment, and the grace of redemption as we navigate our own journeys in faith. Thank you for watching. We hope this story inspired you and drew you closer to the powerful truths of God's Word. Don't stop here. By subscribing, liking, sharing, and commenting, you're not only helping this channel grow, but also joining in the kingdom work of spreading the gospel to reach more people. Every time you share this video, you're bringing the message of God's love and hope to those who might need it most. Subscribe to be part of this mission and get notified when we release new videos. With each like and comment, you're encouraging us to keep creating more Bible-based stories to bless and inspire the world. Together, let's make the good news known and strengthen our faith community online. Hit the bell icon so you don't miss any updates. Thank you for being part of this journey with us. God bless.